Good
Well,
morning. Good morning.
Our topic today is just to have a discussion about uh, Black people being found dead, specifically those who have been hanging on trees in the South.
Okay.
And I think that's worthy of a conversation. My name is Stan Archie. I am a proud father and grandfather, and I serve as a pastor servant in the city. Have a consulting firm and a number of other things that we do. But my professional, other than pastorate, is my work in human behavioral science. I do have a JD, and so um, so that's me.
Okay. And I'm Darren Fulcher. I am an attorney, um, and a father, brother, friend, sibling, um, and lover of the Word of God. I believe the Word of God with all my heart, um, and grandfather. I forget to mention that most of the time.
Mm,
Um, um, Becoming more and more an active grandfather.
okay.
So that's interesting. Never saw myself in that spot, but here I am, and there we go.
All right. So today we're having a conversation about what's been happening in the news lately, um, and it's been over the last several years, but lately there's been an increase in um, Black people being found dead under strange situations. And what we're trying to do, I mean, we want to give an honest investigation of kind of what's happening, but it's an odd coincidence, in my opinion, that it's happening, and it's happening in the South. And the challenge is that it is um, the suspicious circumstances of each one of these, and so we're trying to. So we want to just kind of want to talk about that, give perspective on that. Last week we talked about this idea of Black people moving away from Black people and being in predominantly white neighborhoods, often neighborhoods that really didn't want you there in the first place. And then when we see strange things come up, our question was, how should we respond to those? How should we respond to people who, in many cases, made a choice to move into an environment where, in some people's opinion, the risk is greater. They think they're getting away from violent crime, but the question is, are you running from the dog to live with the lion? That was a discussion we had last week, and that can kind of piggyback on this discussion that we're having now, where people from the South, college campuses, will bring up the Nolan case, all those different kind of situations. And the justice question is, they're being ruled a suicide without investigation. There's usually a rush to conclude. The optics look very strange, and the details of the investigation are often not disclosed publicly. In some cases, they're not even on the news. Social media has been in a frenzy. It's hard to tell what is actual facts and what is not. Some people say 70 people over the last 10 years. Some people say, it's hard to really count because a lot of these things are no longer counted under this administration, because they are removing the sort of the racial tracking that is taking place in a lot of scenarios. So that's kind of what we're talking about. We start with a quick video, unless you have a comment to bring us in.
Nope. Go
All
ahead.
right, let's start with a video.
Okay, Christina, thanks. The Hinds County coroner has identified the woman found hanging from a tree behind a Jackson home this week, and it's a case that's now drawing even more attention.
That's right. A city council member says federal authorities need to step in. 16 WAPT's Ross Adams explains what he's asking for and why he says the investigation needs more eyes on it.
A young woman found hanging from a tree in the backyard of a vacant house in West Jackson has been identified as Tasia Fortune. The coroner says the 29-year-old woman had been suspended from the tree 3 to 4 days before someone discovered the remains Monday night. According to City Councilman Kenneth Stokes, the Jackson Fire Department had to use a ladder truck to remove Fortune's body from the tree.
That means she was high in the air. What kind of inhumane person will hang somebody in that manner? Everywhere you go, they talking about that hanging. I don't care where you go, to the grocery store, to get something to eat, people talking about that hanging.
The Jackson Police Department hasn't been talking about its investigation of the hanging. Other than a late Monday night social media post, JPD has been so tight-lipped they haven't even sent out a press release.
Once upon a time, a press release would have come out quickly because of the sensitive nature of hangings in Mississippi.
Councilman Stokes is worried. That's why he sent a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office asking for help about the incident on Road of Remembrance. In his letter, Stokes says he wants federal authorities to assist police finding Fortune's killer and why they strung her body up in a tree.
Hangings in the world of Mississippi, when you think of Emmett Till and others, it's a bad word. So surely somebody should say something.
Reporting from Jackson, Ross Adams, 16 WAPT News.
Thoughts?
Well, I would say a couple of things. The first is she'd been hanging for 3 to 4 days.
Mhm.
I don't know if I was gone for 3 or 4 days, my family members wouldn't be looking for me and find me.
I think they were looking for her to
I
try to
don't,
figure out where she
so
was.
they didn't say one way or the other.
Mhm.
And so I don't. I'm just hesitant. There have been a lot of missing Black people lately. I've read that not too long ago. Read about this case. Nolan Wells. It goes on. And hanging is a specific, crime that musters images of late 1800s through the 1960s.
Mhm.
But be quite frank with you, I don't know if we've had many years without a hanging of a Black person in this country. I mean, there have always, even in the 2000s, I was keeping track of people being hanged in the United States. At some point, I stopped probably about 2006 or so. But, through the 1990s and 2000s, there were Black people being hanged. I remember, I think it was in Racine County, Kansas. There was a little boy that was hung probably about 2001-ish. No one ever made us. No one ever said anything. I mean, this has been going on for some time, and I don't know if people kill them and then hang them and want to make it look like is racially motivated. All I know is that is just one of those things of the Bible talks about the curse of being hung on the tree.
Mhm.
And it is something that is tied to some spiritual warfare. I think I have this. It brings up images of just cruel death, the cruelty of the human that would ever do that. But that's what we live in, as we've lived with in this country. America is probably the most violent country that's ever lived on the face of this planet.
Mhm.
Have probably killed more people than anybody on the face of this planet. And they started killing with us,
Mhm.
and they haven't stopped with killing people of color, mostly in this world.
But they say we are the ones who are the most violent.
They can say whatever they want to say, but statistically we all know that if you count all if you think about Iran, for instance,
Mhm.
or you think about Iraq, you think about Afghanistan. Americans have killed more Muslims than they have ever killed on 9/11. Prior to America had killed more. America is a killing machine. Um, i- and just to think about the violent nature of the United States of America.
Mhm.
Um, we like to think about Iran. When we think about Iran, we think about um, the 1953. I'm sorry, 1979. We start with 1979 when we think about Iran. We think about um, the hostage taking. That's where we start with the history of Iran, or the Ayatollah taking over, which is 1979. But we don't start with 1953, where they had a democratically elected government, and we overturned that government and put in that family that was there for the in order to control their oil. They had no problems with the United States up until then. None. It was a democratically elected country. We just wanted their oil. And so we decided to create violence in their country like we've done across Latin America. And then we destabilize those countries. And then when those people come to this country, because their countries are destabilized, we treat them violently. And African Americans are the canary in the coal mine. We're the canary in the coal mine of their violence, the insidious nature of the toxic chemical that has been spread, and it's evil. And so no, I mean I don't. It doesn't surprise me because I used to keep track of it. But I'm going to say something. It has nothing to do with the neighborhood you live in, because majority of those people that have been killed live in predominantly Black neighborhoods.
But they're found.
But
they come missing.
They come up missing. We don't know exactly. But the majority of those people live in Black neighborhoods. So it has nothing to do with, because even through the 1920s, 1930s, we had segregation, we were still getting killed. So it has nothing to do with, it's just the fundamental foundation is to deal with the nature of the evil that besets us. It's the nature of the evil that besets us.
And so this movement that is discussed highly on social media, mostly, that the increase in the activity of the Klan and the endorsement, the pardoning of folks who are in the Black hate movement that is coming from this administration. Let's remove everything that indicates or that identifies or holds us accountable to racial equality, and let's put something in place that would allow freedom to torture, hang, and do things to Black people, which really is kind of what's happening. Even the segregation rules have been either you've defunded all the enforcement, stop tracking the data. There's been this freedom to be able to do this without any justice. You're not, and I think that has stimulated the increase.
Yeah, I mean, all the data from the federal agencies and civil rights organizations have indicated that anti-Black hate crime in the United States has increased significantly over the past decades, and is roughly rising 81%. It rose 81% between 2015 and 2024. Anti-Black bias consistently remains the most significant reported category of racially motivated hate crimes tracked by law enforcement. And I don't like to compare, well, or talk about oppressed people because, and I would say, Jews like to talk about the hate crime against Jews, and we hear that more in the media.
Right.
Yet they are not the most hated. They're not the most violence committed against more. And most of the time, and I will say this is, even though I grew up and spent a lot of time in a Jewish household, and I would say that they have the ability to assimilate if they want to,
Right.
and a lot do. And not to say that any crime against them is justified, not, and that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that there's a particular anti-black sentiment in this world, and particularly led by United States of America. And if we don't understand that, then we are being blind to what the reality is. And I believe there's a spiritual underpinning to that. And I don't know why that spiritual underpinning is there, but I believe there's a spiritual underpinning to it. I believe there's something special about African Americans or Black people in this world to where the enemy would want to silence our voice or kill us.
There was and so with I think that, I was having I was speaking at an event, and it was based on some research that I'd done about the unique challenges that Black people in America face versus other categories of discrimination claims. And one of my points was that Blacks have never had a closet. And it was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, LGBT people who you guys talk about quite a bit, they had a closet they could go in and come out of. And when you go in the closet, I mean, you're not seen. Jewish people, they can really have a closet. I mean, it's not, you get to decide when you want to come out as a Jew or as a LGBT category. You get to come out of the closet. I think for us, the fight has always been that you have used our birth identity, public identity, to categorize us and have legally, not only traditionally, but legally attacked being Black. And that is different from, I think some discriminatory categories were left out for one reason or another. But to make it a part of your fiber as a country, to hate this group, to keep this group at a lower, value, that has been the debate since the beginning. I mean, to have equal rights should not be a fight. I mean, it should not be a debate. We're not saying we want advantage. We want more. We're just saying equal. And then we say, well, look, we just want you to leave us alone. You stop beating on us, stop killing us. We're not asking you to do any favors. We're not asking you to stuff. Leave us alone. Let us have a voice at the table where we matter. Let's have those kind of things. And when you say that, it means to many, or put it this way, it stimulates to many huge arguments, huge debates. And I think that's part of the problem. Have you seen, you've been to the lynching museum, the Legacy Museum?
No, I haven't.
We went down, and this is kind of on the front of it. I mean, it's great. What it did is it took.
Is this in Mississippi?
It's in Mississippi, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we had an opportunity to go down there, spend some time, my wife and I, and become a part of the work in gathering So what we were doing was we were gathering soil and having a proper burial for those who had been lynched unjustly. And there's no justice that's taking place. And so we were going to the ones in Missouri
Mm-hmm.
and having a ceremony. We would call the people in, sometimes the relatives of those who have been lynched, and we would actually pull people in. And when down in Sykeston, we had not only the relatives, but we also had the relatives of those who did the lynching.
Wow.
We came down and had a ceremony just to, just kind of acknowledge and give them a proper burial. And then we sort of kept we have these jars of the soil that's there, that's kept, that it works its way back here to the Lynching Museum. And it just kind of shows and gives you a clear picture of the history. And there is a representation plaque that is put up for each person who we discover. Huge museum, big piece. But you know what's right down the street? The biggest flag, what do you call it?
The Confederate flag.
Biggest Confederate flag I've ever seen. Just to let you know, hey, we watch it.
You know, the irony of the Confederate flag is it is really an anti-American flag.
Mm-hmm.
But this is how crazy
Mm-hmm.
we're willing to call evil good and good evil, is that it has become, in the South, in various places and various corners of this country, equal to or on par with the American flag.
Mm-hmm.
And they fly them together, but they were never, they're quite frankly, the ideals were supposedly opposite, but they really weren't opposite, though. I mean, when you really get down to it, but they were supposed to be opposed ideas. And that flag has become, to some, more, they're willing to fight more for that flag than they are anything else.
Well, I think that is their I think they believe that because, the Confederates never stopped the fight. Like I said, I always say all they did was they never conceded.
Yes, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, you and I had that conversation not too long ago, is that basically the South actually won the war. They just lost all the battles. I mean, they just lost the battle.
Well, I wouldn't as much say they won, but they continued the fight.
Yeah. Oh, they, in a grand scheme of things, the Republican Party is an extension of that fight. Mm-hmm. And from Ronald Reagan was probably outside of Donald Trump and Woodrow Wilson. He was probably the most racist president we had. His policies were so anti-Black. They're just as anti-Black as Trump's.
Mm-hmm.
But he did it with a smile and with good language. And he used the code word of welfare queen, and then it was the extension of Willie Horton to the Bushes. It was all anti-Black.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having a discussion with my father, because he was in the defense industry and he was voting for George Bush. I was voting, my first election, I was voting for Dukakis.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, well, he's going to protect my job.
Mm.
And I said, for how long?
Right.
As a young man, I understood that there was something underpinning in this world that was anti-me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the very what we as Black people, particularly as Black men, need to do, is be able to call these things out in such a way within our families within our communities. So we actually take back that word woke, so we stay woke, because woke has nothing to do with LGBTQ, whatever that all it is, has nothing to do with any other stuff. It was about Black men staying woke about not being lynched. That's what being woke was about.
Mm-hmm.
And they usurped the word and made it something so different. And liberals have taken it. Conservatives have underpinned this to make it mean something different than what it really is.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to stay woke, and we need to tell people, our young men, to stay woke, because these things will continue to happen in our communities. But you know that recently, I think it was in Philadelphia, ICE was coming into their community, and a group of like Black Panthers or whatever, they basically said, no, you can't come in.
Right.
With gun, hey, you can't come in here.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not.
Right.
I remember and I'm going to tell the story about my kids went to a private school. I mention this all the time. In this private school that they went to, one of the elite private schools, are probably I think probably the elite private school in Kansas City, and probably one of the elite private schools, top 20 in the country. So there was a repeated incidents of one or two white boys picking on one of the young ladies who was an African immigrant, and they were writing on her desk "nigger" and things like that. I mean, this had gone on. They had tortured her and the parents, we didn't know about this. They had tortured her for like a year or so. Okay. And it started to come to the forefront that the boys were torturing this little girl. Okay. I think she probably was in the 8th or 9th grade or something like that. And so the school had a gathering of parents in the predominantly, it's concerned parents, predominantly Black parents. They wanted to talk to everybody and have this meeting. And everyone's talking about what should happen and how they should address it. And these boys were getting expelled, or, what are these things that they were doing? Okay. The administration was saying that they're taking care of it. And a lot of parents goes, why are we just not hearing about this? And a lot of Black parents are upset. These are doctor, lawyers, parents or politicians, or whatever, whomever else. Kids are all there. And at some point they said, Darren, we haven't heard from you. We really would like your comment. And I had a few times, the dean and I, the head of the school, and I had lunch together, and we would have conversations. Okay. And he goes, hey, Darren, I know you. So why don't, I know you have some thoughtful things to say. We haven't heard from you. I said, no, you don't want to hear from me. And these are all the good liberal white people who are there, and all the Black parents. I said, you guys don't want to hear from me. They go, yeah, we do. We really want to hear from you. I said, okay, if you really want to hear from me, let me tell you what should have happened. I said, all those little Black boy athletes that you recruited here, if they would have handled this, we shouldn't have had to deal with this. Those little Black boys should have been kicking their butt. And the parents of those little Black boys, should have told their boys, you should have been protecting these girls. Because that's what I would have told my son. I'd have told my son to take those boys behind the woodshed and whoop that tail. And then you stop this you begin stopping this and saying, we're not taking this. So my opinion is, we have to stay woke and we have to stay vigilant. I honestly believe that there is we have a power to stop a lot of these things, but we have to be vigilant about it, and we got to stay woke.
And so I do believe that, divide and conquer. I do believe that the unity that we once had, and that we still have in some neighborhoods, gives us a voice to say, it's not going to happen here. and that's kind of where I say I think there is a place. What I was told was when they started threatening me before the slander campaign came on. These are leaders. These are politicians and people who are elected, and some of the highest people in Missouri and some in the United States. Because I had a position, remember, it was I was working in national level and had a position at the state level at the same time, young Black man, and was told by a good friend of mine, these are the kind of people who can make you disappear and it'll be an accident. White guy, and I'm showing pictures of the museum as we speak. So these are just kind of representations of some of the folks who were lynched or murdered and these folks have not been. There was no justice in any of these cases.
And I tend to think Thomas Jefferson said this once: if God is a just God, woe to us. Something to that effect. What we've done to the African. And I know that God is a just God. And I know that he's a avenger of those of innocent blood that is spilled.
And they view innocent blood as abortion.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds.
Yeah. And so, I would just say that just like the little girls' school that was just bombed by United States in Iran, and on a strictly, I believe the word of God. I believe, and I know that Israel was punished because they spilled innocent blood. One of the reasons they went into captivity is because they were spilling innocent blood and they were killing the strangers, the foreigners, the immigrants that were coming into their borders.
Right.
The reason that they were, that God had blessed them, the small people that they were, was so they could be a blessing to the world. So they would come and see who the true God was and is.
And they turned that around. This picture that you see right now, all of those blocks that are hanging down, if you get close enough to them, they are pictures of. They have, each one of them represents a person that was hung, and they have the date and the name in the subscription above them so that you can see that each one of these. And so this is where we've gone to the sites, and we've had services in the place they were hung. Most of them were in front of churches, Black churches.
Yeah.
And these are the jars where we took the soil after having a funeral service and brought that back, and we kept that soil. So this huge memorial basically gives you the history that we don't talk about. It was an interesting, humbling place to be.
My question is, okay, growing up, I used to be ashamed of slavery. I didn't like, I didn't like February, the month of February, as a kid, because it made me feel a certain way. Because it made me feel like, but as I've gotten older, and as I got older, I realized it wasn't our problem. It was their problem.
It was their problem. Yeah.
It was their problem.
And I always viewed it as American problem. And I really didn't take it as us or them until when you remember we were the first group to get sort of integrated into, that we were first wave of immigration. And so when we got pushed over into and I would say all white, but I would, the proper word probably be predominantly, but to us it was all white. It was 500 versus 12 or so. So when we went over and I saw their parents protesting and people were circling and calling us names as we went in, that was the first time I really thought it was them. It was us versus them, because eventually, remember, we played ball with and hung out with their kids. And they said, my mom, you can't come over because my mom don't think we should be your friend. And my dad says so and so. So these are conversations that kids had.
Yeah, but I remember 1978-ish. When the busing was going on, I think it was 78, 79.
Yeah, it
Could have been
started
77.
it started really, the full blown started in really 79, I think. That was when
So,
the full blown busing started.
but this is what I remember. I remember black kids on the school bus and white boys with pipes hitting at the school bus,
Right.
and it was a school bus, and all I kept thinking was about my sisters.
Right, because
Well, almost.
and see, and here's the deal. Y'all came after us.
Yeah. So yeah, it already died down. I mean that you know,
Can you imagine that when we went, we were the first.
yes.
So there was no, and we weren't bused at first, because we
Yeah.
was all walking the southeast, and then the next year, half the block, which meant in our case, me and the Kennards, had to walk to Southwest.
Yeah.
And
So
Coach Robinson used to bring us home. He used to bring us to Troost, to Gregory and Troost, and drop us off so that we would be safe coming home.
and I find that so you think about they have to change the narrative. The devil has to say what's up is down and what's down is up. Because a part of his mode of operation is deception and to beguile. So a part of what they do is to say that African Americans are violent. When we, truth be told, have been the most peaceful people considering what's happened to us. Now,
overall.
Overall,
I think we've been the most reported and the most watched and the most convicted. But are we complicit in any way?
Oh, I think we are. But I think what ends up happening is, I mean, it is almost like, what do you call that? The syndrome, the Patty Hearst,
Stuck.
the Stockholm.
Stockholm, yeah.
It is almost as if we tend to. When we talk about anti-black, okay, we can be as anti-black as they can be.
Right.
So, and that is, part of my problem. And I think when Barack Obama was just telling the story recently, and I don't know if I sent that to you, but he was telling a story of, he was being interviewed by Steven Jackson and the other ex-basketball player. And they asked him about him facing discrimination as being a mixed kid. And is there something unique about that? And him growing up as a black man, and when he realized he was a black man, how did he take that identity on? And he said, well, one good thing that his mother did was she always spoke highly of his father.
Right.
She, she said his grandparents did that. So he didn't have, and he grew up in Hawaii, so they were always mixed people around. He goes, that was a very diverse group of people. You know, you had whites, you had, but not very many black people, but you had Asians and, you know, various groups of people. And he goes, so, but when he came to the mainland,
Mm-hmm.
he understood a way that he was black. But what he did, he said what he initially did is he began to pick on the guy that was a Carlton of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy from East St. Louis checked him.
Mm-hmm.
And he realized,
meaning he was nerd.
yeah, he was a nerd. The guy was a nerd. And he said at that time, Barack was smoking weed, trying to be cool. You know, he's trying to be, you know, hey, I'm gonna prove that I'm a black man. He was trying to prove, you know, his bona fides, if you will. He's trying to get his street cred. And he thought by separating himself from the guy that appeared most close associated with what they would say was white, is a way that he would make himself more black. That happens in our community, and it's happened to me so many times. And just because, and we are not, we do, the very people that could be our natural allies, our natural leaders, our natural wise men, we as a community tend to put a label on them as a Carlton. And so we become complicit in this sort of anti-black, and we want to define black as this. When the police define black as, you know, you all are here, we're all in the same boat. Now, I would say that some people of that ilk also do it on the opposite side and say, hey, this person is to this, and so they go the other way.
So do you know this?
Be careful. And I would say, so, and that's my argument about where you live, is we're monolith. We cross every single spectrum, and we need to embrace that. And so,
and see, and I think that now some people I have heard from some of the more elder people have really colorism, according to them, comes from the fact that some of the kids were kids of slave owners who had children with their slaves, whether it was molestation or whatever the case is, but they had the kids, and then those kids had special privileges because of their proximity to whiteness, so to speak. And so that's kind of what they say. This guy who's posted right here, you know who this is?
I don't know who this is.
Okay, this guy is so they had a lot of people who said they voted for Trump because of their business. So this guy voted for Trump because of his business, but he's Haitian. And so everybody said, man, they said, he said, so one guy said that he said of you that you're eating the cats and dogs.
Yeah.
And you still turned around and voted for him. But the self-centeredness was, he has 6 business. He has a 6-chain business. He's done pretty well. A lot of Haitians are his clients. And so what ends up happening is he's having to close down businesses, having to do because of the deportation, because of the end of the protections that he had. And it'd be the same as there was another guy who was, he was talking about he voted for Trump. There's a lot of folks who regret it, but the guy who voted for Trump because, you know, he wanted to get rid of the criminals that have come across the border, and he and his wife stood together and they stood for him, and his wife ended up getting deported.
So yeah, people are complicit in their own downfall.
Yeah, and the big argument people are making is that how self-centered and anally focused you were to think of your business over your people. And I think even with that guy, that because the lady who Mr. Trump and she was on, she was part of the campaign. They paraded her around. She was this Mexican lady, paraded her around and had her on stage at the RNC, and she was all involved in all this stuff. She got deported.
It's the same thing as the farmers. I mean, in order for his military budget, people don't even realize this. The new budget that he has proposed, $1.5 trillion. That would cut, I think, $600 million in farm grants, $200 million in Head Start program, $200 million or something like $200 billion in aid to connect the rural areas, their broadband. I mean, it is a direct attack on rural America, as well as urban America. These people all voted against their interests because they're anti somebody else.
And the movement of hate. Like I think right now, to have these kind of movements, you got to have somebody who you are hating.
Yes, and so it is always something or someone that someone else hates. Like I always say that Black people are the canaries in the coal mine. But they're okay. The problem is that people have always been okay with us dying first, and then they come to their aid.
Well, and part of that,
and they expect us to come to their aid. And do you remember when Mexicans were saying, when they were getting deported, they were saying, "Where are the Black people helping us protest? Where are the Black people? Where are the Black people?" I laughed at that. No, and I laughed at that initially. Now, I am all for human rights, and I think what's being done to them is abhorrent. Is just the racism, but the anti-human factor. If they're going to be anti-human to them, they definitely will do it to me. And so I believe that we as Black people need to stand up for human rights, no matter what those rights are.
But I think the question is how.
Yeah.
So I think when they took a stand, believing that we would be the most tortured under this regime, they basically said, "Too bad." And so then when they became the first victims, and I think, if things continue in this direction, our turn is coming.
No. They weren't the first victims. We were the first victims.
No. I mean, the first victim under the regime. So what he did was he started dismantling a lot of Black stuff. But what we've seen with ICE and the attacks of ICE, they were the first visible display of what we had been going through at mass, ad nauseum.
They have only gotten a little taste.
I agree with that.
Oh, they have only got.
But they were and I think that now that they have begun to experience things, and I think the other things is because here's where they tried to back off a little bit, where when they tried to back off a little bit when when whites start getting killed by ICE. And he tried to say, well, let's do something. We got to do something about this. It's too rough, whatever case matters. But white people start coming out because they realize that you are now in proximity to the same threat.
But this is what I hate. I've heard commentators, especially liberal commentators, say, well, these were law-abiding Americans. And any American would be killed on the street.
It's like we've been living there for a long time.
No, but I laugh at that because there were Mexicans being killed, or Hispanics, or people of color being killed, and they were okay with that because somehow they differentiated their killings with these white people being killed because you hear it in what they were saying and saying, hey, we need to protest this because these were law abiding and anyone could. They were just protesting and got killed. Okay, lady. I mean, okay, lady, man.
When you recognize that it could be you, that's why I said when they start seeing that, oh, you're not protected either, then all of a sudden the protests come. Let me run another video real quick.
Family in Mississippi is now begging for answers after their 21-year-old was found dead hanging from a tree at Delta State University. Campus police say the body of 21-year-old Trey Reed, a black student, was discovered by staff members on Monday morning. Authorities quickly ruling out foul play, and during a press conference today, the university president insisting that race relations are not an issue at the university.
I can say that my heartbreak is comprehensive, not just for Trey, although it is primarily for Trey, but for the fact that the rest of the world has an impression of Delta State that is so at odds with what I know to be this institution. This institution should not be associated with hate or hate crimes.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, now representing Reed's family, demanding more transparency. The family saying we cannot accept vague conclusions when so many questions remain. Let's bring in our Ike Ajachi. So, Ike, what are we learning from police today? And are they still continuing to rule out foul play?
Yeah, Kira, several different agencies surrounding this investigation are saying just that. The Delta State University police chief, he's come out and said that there is no indication of foul play surrounding this incident. He also said that there is no ongoing threat to staff or faculty. Now, if you also look at what the Bolivar County Coroner's Office is saying, it's also falling in line with that. They're saying through a preliminary examination that there are no injuries to 21-year-old Trey Reed's body that are consistent to a physical attack. So that they said that there are no lacerations, no bruises, no broken bones, anything that would look like there was a physical attack to his body. Now, the coroner's office is saying that they are investigating this as a suicide, and they're also saying that the full autopsy is currently being done by the Mississippi State Crime Lab, and that'll be finished in about 24 to 48 hours, Kira.
So what is the family saying? Are they thinking it's a suicide?
Well, Kira, the family of Trey Reed right now, they are expressing deep frustration and they are demanding transparency surrounding this investigation. Right now, through their attorney, Vanessa Jones, they have announced that they are conducting their own independent autopsy and they're even conducting their own investigation around this. They are demanding answers, they're saying, that are shrouded in some kind of a cloud of secrecy. This is according to the attorney and the family. So what we're seeing right now is that they're claiming that there has been a lack of direct communication from law enforcement, from the university to the family on the day this incident was discovered. That is, of course, on September 15th, just 2 days ago. They're saying there has been no communication, and that's exactly what they're demanding. Take a listen.
Family does not know exactly what happened on September the 15th of 2025. We are seeking answers. The family of Trey Reed has not even received a phone call from the president of Delta State University.
He told me that they found Trey Reed in his room. And he didn't say possible suicide, he said suicide.
So when I talk about the injustice, what I mean is the same investigative efforts, energy is not given to any of these cases. And even with the protests, the media frenzy is not happening. It's just they may mention something because social media has it out there, and then also the rush to judgment. So here's a guy hanging in a tree. Now, from my understanding, the height of the tree, like he would have had quite a ladder that was next to him if he hung himself, because the height of the tree was not something you can climb up in and then come out to the part of the branch that he was on, the part of the tree that he was on, and then hang yourself. I mean, so when they say there's nothing suspicious, the way it happened, there's no logical way to be able to see someone committing suicide that way. The other thing is that the whole idea that they called first and said he was found in his room. And then, of course, it got out that he was on the tree. And so they had to recant that, had to pull back that argument. But I think, I still think, I'm not going to come into the hunting area of a lion and say, I have a right to be here.
I think the analogy is disproportionate to the actual reality. Because if that's the case, then we should just move away from the United States, because in reality, in Mississippi, Black people make up, I think, roughly 40% of the population.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know another state that has that high rate of Black people.
Now, most of the Black people moved from the South who are in the Midwest.
Yeah, so when we look at that, there's not a direct correlation between where you live and if you're going to get lynched.
Where did most of the Blacks who thought we got to get out of the South, they came to the Midwest?
No, they went to Chicago and New York, and St. Louis. They went looking for those manufacturing jobs. In the it was after the 1920 Red Scare, that summer of 1919, where there was a disproportionate number of Black people just being decimated in the South.
And they continued up until my parents.
Yeah. And so, but we've seen the reverse happen lately, where Blacks are moving back to the South. And there's been a reverse migration now. And
that's more of my concern, because the politics in the South are more racist and openly racist.
Openly racist, but not more racist, because I would much rather enemy tell me he's my enemy than a friend have a small whisper campaign behind my back.
So in these lynchings, where have all these lynchings over the last, let's say, 2 years since the administration changed?
Well, I don't know where they all have been, but I know that we've had lynchings as well as in the North as in the South. When I was keeping
the lynchings have been in the South.
Yeah, but that has nothing. I mean, okay. The point of it is this: you have Black areas in the South, and there's still lynchings going on. You have more Black universities,
right? But it's the politics.
Yes,
it's because justice comes from those places, and when you can gerrymander out,
true,
all of the representation that has taken place.
But that gerrymandering is going on across this nation. There's gerrymandering.
This last wave of gerrymandering
from Missouri to Kansas to, there's an attempt in Free State, Kansas.
And this is all you're talking about. Trump's gerrymandering. The policies and the leadership of Georgia and of Florida and all of these places. To me, I wonder why we still go. Like I'd love to go to Florida and sit out on the beach, enjoy myself. They have one of the greatest natural resources. However, I look at the politics that are taking place when they're taking away the freedom to learn Black history, when they're taking away. I mean, it's hard for me to go down there because I don't want to support an economy that is doing this. But yet I see we don't think like that. We don't think.
Yeah. So we could be complicit in our own demise. And so
Yeah,
I agree.
so we need to boycott some of that stuff.
Yeah, and I agree with that we need a boycott. Like we had there's a boycott campaign going on against Target for a long time, and it was actually working.
Right, and that was a church out of Atlanta.
But then you have someone like Jay-Z that goes behind and then creates a partnership with Target, understanding what's going on.
But see, here's where our complicity comes in. If once Jay-Z decide I'm not with y'all, then our backlash towards Target should have also been with Jay-Z.
Exactly.
But those who we placed in these heroic spaces, we for some reason bow down to them beyond. We do to them what real people do to Trump.
Yes, and my issue is this: we put our I would say not our trust, but our glorification in celebrity and in athletes and people that do not have our best interests at heart and and should not be our natural spokesman. I never thought of Michael Jordan as my leader. I would never think of Michael Jordan as that. Now, I don't have an expectation. So I'm not going to put any stock in Michael Jordan. You know, if I met him, cool. If I don't, okay. But the issue is this: in our community, we tend to celebrate what kills us.
Right. There was a guy who came. He was at a open at a poet. He was a poetry guy, and he came out and he said. He used the word black people, but he said, black people love what hates them.
Yeah.
And so it was a whole poet on the things that we love that hate us the most. And one of the things he talked about, so he started listing the lyrics of rap songs and talking about murdering.
We danced to what we, I thought, okay. Yes. And so therefore, okay, and so when someone like, and I would say like me, say that's nonsense. I've had people in my family call me a Carlton because that's nonsense, and they will call me anti-black. When, in my opinion, in reality, you're more dangerous to me than that white guy because you think that this is helping us. How is it?
Well, so to me, I think what I did was I really worked on. So when we started First Saturdays, our goal was recognizing the damage of rap. We thought it would be, we believe in a biblical alternative. And so we created rap as a tool to support what we thought were positive things. And we built a whole community of rap people who were called Team Jesus. And they were rapping, they were using the art in a way that was positive to our people. And I think abandoning it, I think that's a better show of what we're trying to represent than it is to say, stay away from that.
Because I didn't say stay away from rap, but we have to be discerning.
Yeah, I think the tool itself was a good thing. And now, here's what I do with my kids and my grandkids. When they're singing a song, it's a song they like. I ask this question, they'll tell you all the time, what does that song mean? What is it saying? Like, you know, when I talk to people, like songs that we love, me and Mrs. Jones, I said, what is that song talking about? And then they'll start examining and start saying, oh, yeah. Because I do think we have to call attention to the thinking because, we'll listen to the music and groove on it and not even realize what we are dancing to, and we're dancing to our own demise.
Yes.
And I think that was a big issue with this co-laboring, co-mingling. We were looking at Nehemiah chapter 10 last night at our men's Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just looking at how they invited. So what had happened is after Nehemiah rebuilt the temple, he did all that kind of stuff. He got them back on target with God, and when he left to go back to his job, the message was, listen, you need this. Like, you need this temple here. I mean, it's not just and I think that's when people start talking about tithing to church because God's going to bless you, what you give, he gives back to me. That even sounds like you make this investment or it's
that's prosperity gospel. That's killing people as well.
Right.
This
so I think
that kills us people.
Recognizing the value that this thing offers me. This is the vehicle through which God is giving me guidance. It means like turning off the GPS because you don't want to, pay for the power to support its battery life or whatever the case matters. I don't want the doctors to disappear out of ours. So I want to pay. I don't want to rip off my doctor. I don't want to steal from the stores that support our community. You know what I'm saying? I mean, all those things that are detrimental to our survival are the things that we ought to be willing to support. And what I see is that what they had done is the place where the offerings were gathered, they had moved the enemy in because nobody was giving anymore, and gave a home to Tobiah, moved him in to the place. So he had a suite that was previously the gathering place where all the gifts were given to be divided up to give to those who were serving the temple. And I think that's an idea of what we do. We take what's destroying us and bring it into our world, and we eliminate the things that are not destroying us. And I think we do it because of our built-in racism. Like, to me, one of the things I was talking about is these guys who, you are a football player, right? You have no theological background, none of that kind of stuff. But because of your popularity as a football player, you go out and move in and you start a church. Not fund the church, support the church, grow up in the church, build a career as a person who is in ministry. You just go out the day after you get through with football and your 6 kids all over the place and 5 baby mamas. And you go and you say, I'm starting a church, and because of your fame in football, we give you biblical credibility.
I have seen in churches where they will put politicians up on stage with the pastor, or professional athletes, or a celebrity, but not the guy that is doing discipleship.
And the guy that is modeling biblical living every day, the guy who is taking care of his family and have biblical principles in his house. And so the message to young people are about the church, you're not important unless you can be in the arena of secular culture and have some degree of following of popularity. I mean, I was meeting the guy, the first thing the guy said to me, he started telling me how many followers he had. And we're meeting, we're talking, and there was nothing bad about it, but I thought it was interesting that was his introduction. And, I appreciate your work. And so my question, well, what do you do? Let's tell me about your life. Who are you? Well, I got this many followers. Okay. Yeah. So who are you? Because Satan got that many followers too. Yeah. I just think we have this fame issue is part of what we will sell out for our value. And I think that we need to, guys who leave us, in my opinion, we recognize that nothing against you. You're just not in the same fight as me. Jay-Z's not in the same fight as me.
Yeah, and so and so the thing of it is this: there's an African concept of community that we brought over to this country
Mhm.
that we had always been a part part of part of our population has always been community driven, whereas Europeans are very individualist driven. And I explained this to one of my grandson's teachers because
Mhm.
he had just gotten into it with one of his teachers last year.
Mhm.
And the community is that he will do what you need him to do if you showed him that you cared. Now, and they're so individualistic, they were saying, well, all they want to do is, they think what's going to motivate him is just his grades.
But see, I think we're losing to that.
And so
Now, I would say that we grew up like that. We grew up where if you were part of even our physical community, even if you had a different lifestyle, all that other lifestyle, which your political persuasion is, didn't matter. If you lived on the block, you was one of us.
True.
And so, but that came from traditional. It's how we felt about family. It's how we felt about we had all those things in mind. Now I think we individually are like the Haitian guy who says, if it's good for my business, I don't care if it's good for my people.
And I would say that undermines our community, but that undermines humanity. That undermines, and I always go back to.
That's where you live comes in to me.
Well, that's where you live is where you live spiritually, emotionally, sometimes physically,
mentally, physically too.
But I would just say that probably.
Unless you are a plant.
No,
if we put you over there with the expectation that you are going to contribute greatly to our footprint, you are going to be like when I give you an example. When I was working with and so when I first got on to state level work and national work, I was under George Bush. Secretary Spellings was my sort of boss, so to speak. So she was our boss, and then that kind of thing. So it was, and so we were dealing with and battling No Child Left Behind. So part of how I got in trouble is because I could see very clearly what they were doing to disenfranchise African American districts. And so they were trying to take the accreditation away, take the credit away. They were trying to divide the money up. They were doing a whole lot of different kinds of things. Well, what I did was I didn't see myself as part of the group that were doing the bad thing because I was in a good position. I started using that position of voice to begin to connect with people and to get a better understanding of what was happening and come up with a strategy to be able to give us the opportunity for success. I mean, in fact, one of the things that got me in the most slanderous position where they had to get rid of me, where they were searching to get rid of me, was the fact that I was not going to tolerate, because I'm seeing the news saying Kansas City is losing their accreditation, St. Louis is using their accreditation, Hickman Mills, all the black, and I know why it's happening. So I'm not going to just stand by and just let it happen because I'm in a good place. Now, by this time, after Bush was gone and Obama came in, then I was kind of they said, "Hey, would you stay?" And so I stayed and continued to work with them. Now, we were bipartisan in our focus because we were focusing on education. So I really wasn't into the politics, but I was there in the room. And I could see the things that was happening. Now, you would not believe how many people came in. Like some folks said, "Oh, I was in that position, right? So they was like, oh, when my wife came up one time, he married to a black girl. Like, how do you get here if you married to a black girl? That was kind of the insinuation.
Yeah, but that's a short-sighted, ignorant. But
that's the reality that was there. There was
more African Americans in higher positions are married to black people. More,
but they're
players.
That is not.
But I know that's not the stereotype. But 80% of NBA players are married to black women. And
but I'm saying, but that is not what that statement to me meant. We got this door open for this guy, and he's not even one of us. I mean, I could sit in the room, and what I would hear a lot of times is he articulates very well. Now, the old black people would get mad at that. Why do they keep saying that? But one of the things that when one of the offers that came out is if you join our side, because we really need young black men who can articulate well on our side. We need people who have your strategic thinking ability on our side. These are the things that were offered. Be on our side. We're trying to hurt your people. We know that we're trying to do it. And some folks are pretty blatant about, look, we ain't giving you all that. Then, okay, that's fine. I get where you're coming from. And so let me negotiate for what I can get. But the fact that I was committed to representing us and not compromising us for me. In fact, sacrificing me for us. And some of the blacks who were there was like, man, you crazy. Them people, they ain't doing nothing but killing each other. They ain't this, all this kind of stuff. But I was sent there for my strongest mission, sent there because I'm a kingdom dweller. I believe in the Bible and the standards of biblical truth. So there's a moral code that I have to live by. And then secondly, I am a person who was placed in a position where a lot of blacks are not, in order to be able to represent our position in a just way. And so if that meant that as much as I was given the opportunity to be there, then I was willing to sacrifice that opportunity to advance the mission that we were under. And sitting there with guys who I know were, you can go to when Raytown, they just stuck a black man in a situation, and you go to all of these places, what they would do is they would find somebody. And I was supposed to be that somebody from Kansas City, that find somebody who would be the token and who would love the tokenhood so much that they were willing to throw their people under the bus.
It comes down to values. It always comes down to values. What do you value more? And in our situation as a people, do we really value the Word of God and the truth that it stands for? Or do we value our personal position, prosperity, power?
And I would say both.
And so
I would say you gotta value your practical influence, and it's got to be towards justice. I would say when you were a kid, there were some things we did not want you to be involved in because our feeling was this kid's got a little bit. He is sharp, he's insightful, he's smart, and we don't want him out there doing dope like we was doing. We talked about that a lot of times. And
but y'all had me out there. But y'all had me out there fighting.
we had to fight because everybody had to learn how to fight. But what we didn't do was we didn't bring you into the basement across the street from y'all where we sat around there and food with and tried out drug stuff. And we didn't bring you in all that stuff. Because we understood that there's got to be somebody equipped to be able to go out and represent us in those other places. I never thought I would be one of those guys.
Yeah, and what
Because
ends
I
up,
was
but what ended up happening in our community is, and I know this is that, when I graduated from college, there was no, the community didn't celebrate that. But I know that guys, when they got out of prison, there was a celebration.
I do agree that we
And so,
welcome guys back into
and
the fold.
and so so there was a
But
a
I
lack
would say this.
of a
I
lack
think
of
had we not integrated, you probably would have gotten we would have probably celebrated that very differently.
when
By this time, they were
I-
dividing up the community and sending us to different places in education.
and so it ended up being where, and this is where I was getting back to what Barack Obama said, and what he learned early on is not to undermine black men, because if they didn't come from where he came from, or because he thought that they weren't black enough, and he had to learn that. And he said he learned that from somebody from East St. Louis who came from a heart of, he didn't come from Hawaii, and he had to check Barack, say, hey man, what are you doing? So we usually don't have enough discerning men in our community that are telling other men to stay woke.
Now, that's
your
why we
head-
started.
to keep your head on the pivot. I know I was bringing us back to that.
Right. That's why we started Men Talk. And so
Okay.
what Men Talk does, and I have to give you a copy of the book. What Men Talk does is we need to have those corners and those spaces where we can have those conversations. And right now, that has been young guys have found their place, older guys have found their voice in those rooms where we have those conversations. And that's we had some guys who went to and started one on their college dorm because they said, look, we've been doing this for the last year or two, we don't want to lose it. So they started wanting to go ahead. Now this is men, this is not black men, this is men. And so while the majority of them are black, it is really men of all races. So we got some Hispanic guys in there, we got some white guys in there, have found a venue to talk about themselves and our fight for justice and righteousness, but also our position. In this particular case, we are Christian men, so our position in Christ.
Yeah, and I would also say there's a part of being a man that most people don't teach about emotional regulations to young men. That a part of this process of growing up being a man is being able to understand your power, your position as a man, and regulating yourself.
And so, I got to give you the book because I think that because we are taught to live like a man and think like a woman.
Yes.
Then I think we lose a lot of that. Now, let me say this: our time is we're way over our time frame, and so while this will be cut up and divided up into many spaces as it goes out, I appreciate those who have been with us live. But we are at a point where, and it's an abrupt ending, where we gotta wrap up and move on to the next topic. So we want to ask you to please subscribe to, especially if you're on our YouTube channel, Complex Conversations, or our Facebook channel, Complex Conversation. We really need you to subscribe. Some of you subscribe to some of the other venues that we come up with, but I want to ask you specifically to subscribe to those because we're beginning our our footprint in those particular areas. So subscribe, like, and share. Subscribe, like, and share, and let's build these conversations up so that they take place. We hope to advance this thing and eventually have some live conversations. and some other kinds of things where we can sort of share with the community in the most practical way. Any closing thoughts? We'll continue in this line of conversation.
And
Go ahead.
I would just say that in closing, that we need to learn how to value across a spectrum of people in our community that look like us, that don't look like us. And a part of that is understanding who we are, where we are, and where we're headed.
All right. And I'd like to have a conversation really because, and I'll send you, so I have a series of books, 22, and they're on a lot of different things. And most of it is, I have a biblical perspective. So I have a Christian bias. And, but a lot of it is, how do we take that to the practical level and how do we live in a way that reflects our creation and our purpose? And as a specialist in human behavior, what I wanted to do was have some very practical guidance on how we can live our best potential. So we talk about marriage, we talk about men, we talk about women, we talk about everything. And so maybe we can get into some of those topics over time specifically. All right, we appreciate you being with us, hanging with us. Those of us that are long, those of us like, share, and
Subscribe.
subscribe. There we go. All right.